All right, so you guys, welcome to today's class once again. And already, you guys know my name now. My name is Victor. And today we are going to talk about data validation using Joy, right? So now, if you notice, the data that's coming into our API is just coming in plain as it is, right? It's not being validated except when it wants to be saved on the database, right? So what if when maybe the data we are getting, what if we wanted to use it for something before saving it on the database, right? How do we communicate to the front end that the data they sent is not complete, and we tell them maybe exactly what is missing on that data, right? There are two ways you can do it. The first way would be to manually check the data one by one by using if and else statement. So you can say if there's no username, return response.send, username is not found, and else if maybe full name is not found, tell them full name is not found. That's to even check if those things exist. What if those things, those properties exist, but they are not in the format that the backend wants to work with? For example, maybe you wanted username to be a string, but username comes in as a number, and you want to tell them that this username is supposed to be a string. So how do you do that? How do you communicate, right? How do you make that possible with your code? So that's what we are going to see today. We're going to see how we can make that possible, right? So today we are going to pick one of these topics, right? Under it. So how you can check, right, if a value that was sent to you from your front end is a valid string, is a valid number. Of course, number, you have integers, you have what do they call the other one? You have integer, you have floating point numbers. Sorry about that. Then you can check if a data type is a Boolean, right? You can also make a data type required. So if that data doesn't exist, right, then you can actually maybe raise an error that that particular field is required. Then you can set the length of characters for a field, and you can do that for strings. You can do that for integers. Integers works differently from string, right? So you can say if it's a string, it should be like the minimum of 5 characters, maximum of 20 characters. But if you're trying to set a minimum and maximum for an integer, then you have to give it specific values. Maybe the value should be within 10 to 20. So maybe if the user supplies something like maybe 9 or 8 as a value, right? Joy won't accept that. All right. So with what I've said so far, I think we should just dive in and start coding, right? So first, before we start coding, what is the advantage of using something like this, right? What is the main advantage? The main advantage is that it makes it simpler for you to communicate, right, with your code, right? It makes it easier for you to validate what the front end is sending to you and all those stuff, what you're supposed to use, right? If a data type that's supposed to be sent to you, right, to your API is not the way it's supposed to be, then instead of just returning maybe internal server error as default message, internal server error won't help whoever is using your API to know that, okay, this is what is missing or this is what is not missing, right? So that's one of the usefulness of form validation, people to actually use your API, right? Okay, so let's go on to our VS Code and let's see how we can use Joy to start performing validation. Okay. Okay, so this is it, and I got an information that my auth key and password was, I mistakenly exposed that, and I mistakenly exposed something else. Let me see, I exposed something else by mistake. I think upload what I used to upload pictures, right? I think I also
it was in your index.js.
Yeah. So I've corrected that, and definitely after today, I'll change the name and the API key and secrets. I'll regenerate a new one, so you guys don't get to use mine. You have to use yours. Okay, so that's aside, right? Now the library you would use for validation is called Joy, right? And it's not the normal spelling for joy we know, right? It's not J-O-Y, it's J-O-I. Right, so let me make this bigger for you guys. I think that's big enough. All right, so for us to do that, let me clear out this part. You then say npm install joy. npm install joy. That's how you install that tool for validation. Okay. So Joy works similar to how Mongoose works. Similarly, they have certain similarities. And the first thing that makes them similar is that Joy also works with schema. So Joy has a schema at which you can use to validate your data, right? So if there is any issue or if there is any maybe data type that doesn't match with what you specify on your schema, right? It will then throw an error saying, okay, this is the issue with your code, right? Or this is the issue with the data. So let me show the first way to actually validate data, right? Where's the auth? Yeah, so let me go back to auth and let me use login, right? So on a normal day, right? On a normal day, this is what you want to do. You say if there is no email, then you return rest.send, and you say rest.send maybe email is required, right? Then you'd say if email dot includes at, right? If email includes at, this is going to bring back a true. So if email includes at, it means maybe that's one thing you might. If it includes at and it includes.
Include is not correct though.
Okay, and it includes and the email includes what did they call the other one? .com, right? So you want to since you are saying if it includes this and it includes this, right? So here I think you have to negate both of them. So if this is false and this is false, right? So it doesn't include email and it doesn't include. This is like saying if it includes, right? If they both include, but you don't want them to be true when they include. You want it to be false when they are included, but you want it to be true when they are not included, right? Then you can return maybe return rest or send. You're like this is, should I say, this is like the unprofessional way, or should I say the worst way to actually try to do your form validation. Imagine writing a whole lot of if statements here, like let's say 10 different if statements to check if this to check email alone. Remember, this is just email, right? We've not even talked about password. How do we start validating the password? That's another thing. If you want to validate the length of the password, you now say if the password dot length is greater than 6. Sorry, if it's less than 6, then you can give an error, or you can then return res.send. Now say maybe password too short. This is not a good way of actually doing it. So now what's the better way, right? The better way would be to use something like this, like the joy, right? You say const joy should be equals to require, then you require joy. Okay, so remember I said that the first thing for you to do is to create a schema. So down here, if you want to start doing that, you would say const, let's say login schema, login, or let's just, you can name it whatever I want. Maybe login validation schema. And remember, I said that your variable name should always be descriptive, right? Don't just use anything that won't give your a meaning to your variable name. So it say equals to joy dot schema. Joy dot okay, sorry, not joy dot schema, joy dot objects, sorry, because remember that your request body comes as an object, right? So I'm telling Joy that I want to validate an object. Then I can then put the properties of that object inside this object method here. So I could say joy.object, and then inside that object, I then say, now for me to start my validation, I'll say where username is joy.string. So this is going to make sure that what I'm passing to the username is a string. If it's not a string, then there will be an error message that this username expects a string or requires a string, right? Then I could say min, right? Okay, sorry, it's email, right? Okay, so since it's email, what we'll do here is we'll say if you want to validate email, right? You say simply say joy.email, right? joy.email is going to validate that email, right? So you know that an email should have an email should have .com, an email should have this thing, the username part and the other parts that denotes the company that email, right, is registered on that, right? So joy.email, then you can check if you can make that email required. So if the user doesn't pass the email, right, then you should scream at him that this email must be passed to me. So you can do something like email, sorry, required. So with what I've written so far, I have done my validation for email. You can also chain more values here, right? Then I could then come here and say that for the password field, I would say joy dot I think there is joy dot okay, joy dot string dot required, right? So this is like this is basic, right? I could now the way you join them, right? There's no particular order to how you join it. I could put required here, put string the other way, put string here, put required the other way, right? I could say dot max or dot min should be 6 characters. So if you have less than 6 characters, it's not complete, right? I could say dot max. The max should be like 30 characters. So your password should not be longer than 30 characters, right? Then now how do we now writing this alone, right? This is like the schema that you just created for your validation. So how do you validate it? Right? You can say const you can say what I like doing is I'll just say error here. In case there's any error, I'll say that error should be equals to login validation schema dot validate, right? So this login schema, which is what this schema we've created, and we want to validate something using that schema. So I'll say I want to validate, and what do I want to validate? Remember that this validation schema is an object that has the email and password properties. So which means inside this validate, I should pass in the object, right? So I can simply do this and write email, comma, password, or I could just pass in raq.body. Remember, raq.body still contains email and password, so still the same. So I could just say email, password. Okay. Then after this, what do you want to do with the error? Remember that this error will not send itself to the front end automatically, right? So although there's a way to actually do it, if you say validate async, right? When once there's an error, it's going to pass it to the okay, we didn't wrap this in a try and catch. Okay, right? If we wrap this in a try and catch, validate async will pass the error to the catch part of the code. But here, since it's not wrapped in a try and catch, we can say if there is an error, or let me just say, if there is a validation error, okay? So if there is a validation error, we'll write return to stop the code from there. Then we'll say res.send, right? And then at this point, we would send that validation error to our client so that they will see what is wrong with their login. Okay? So that's how you can actually do. This is an example of how you can do it. So let's test it. Let's say npm starts. Okay. That starts out quite well. Then we can come here to our test.rest and try to log in. Where is it? hot/login, right? Let's see. Let me just make this shorter, right? Yes, let me take the original password out so that I can do my testing. So if I change this to just VIC, right? So I have an issue. It's saying joy.email is not a function. Okay. It's saying joy.email is not a function. Yes. I think I needed to do it that way. Okay, sorry. Joy is not a function. Sorry, so I'm not supposed to put this. Sorry. Joy.email. So I think there's always an email validation somewhere here. Okay, so let's just keep it at string because string is what I'm seeing. I think there's also okay, there's also required too. So okay, so okay, it follows a certain format, right? So it has to you can't start with email first, right? So you have to say the data format first before what you want to validate. So if I said string.email and then that way, but then I want to test for the password validation. That's why I'm putting a very short password. Okay, saying invalid credential. Okay, and let me see. I think I know why that is happening also. So where is it firing the invalid credential from? So let's go to our index. I think there should be a place I actually wrote the invalid credential stuff. Somewhere here. Okay, so we'll try and debug this together. So let's see how we can actually solve that problem. Console.log. Let me see if there is any validation error. It is going to show it out there. Okay, it's saying undefined. Okay, I think I know why. There's nothing like validation error there. So I would say error should be a type of validation error. This is me, right? This is me renaming the error as validation error, right? So I'm saying whatever error I don't want to call it error, right? I'm renaming it to being validation error inside this, my destructure, my destructuring statement here. Okay, so let's come back here and test it again. Yeah, so this is what I'm actually looking for, right? Exactly what I'm looking for. If we open up this part very well, you see, it's giving us the whole what we need. Saying original email, this is telling us password, the length must be 6 characters long. Password. See, the type of error string that mean the limit is 6. So it seems someone seeing this will know, okay, from this message that the password is too short, right? And I need to work on that, right? Let me see if I change this. Let me change this email to something that's not valid. You see, it also validates the email too. It says email must be a valid email. Path email type string.email. See, then the value I put in, right? So you see, it's giving us what we need, right? How it's making us validate what we are sending, right? See what it's giving us. Okay. So with this library, right, or with this package, you can actually check what is going on and make it strict that, okay, maybe you need a string or you need maybe a number. Of course, if you want to accept an integer, you can just say maybe joy dot integer. There's always that zip. Okay, joy dot number dot integer. Yeah. So joy dot number, first you have to specify it's a number. What kind of number? Is it an integer or is it maybe any other one? Right? So you can use that to always validate. So let's see how we can add that validation to all our routes, right? Let's see how we can validate all our routes. So here, what do you think we should do? We'll say register validation schema equals to joy dot objects, right? Then the objects I say will contain full name, should be the joy dot string, and then it should be required, right? I could say the minimum for a username should be, username should be minimum of 8 characters long, or your full name should be a minimum of 8 characters long. But or I could just leave it, right? Someone's name could just be you. I guess that's Nigeria. Email should be joy dot string dot email, right? That's required because it's required. Then the row 2 is going to be req dot body dot row. Oh, sorry. The role is going to be joy dot string dot okay, joy dot string, right? Just joy dot string. Remember that this role is not really required if you don't specify the role, right? Come here to users. If you don't specify the role, the default is going to be user, so it's not really required. then we can say that the password should be joy.string dot joy.string dot right, the minimum for it should be like 6 characters and it's required. Okay, and definitely we can validate it here. We can say that the error as register validation error should be equal to the register validation schema dot validate, yes, and of course I'll just pass the request dot body inside there or in there. Then I could come down here and say if there is a register validation error, then return res.send register validation error, right? So we've done that. Okay, now I see a place I can actually use try and catch here. So let me see how I could use try and catch to do my validation. Let me see how I can use async, right, to create my validation. Okay, so I could just say console dot sorry, I say console. I'm saying const forgot password schema validation schema equals to joy.object. The object is going to be what's this object? The object should just have the email, right? And mind you, if you just want to validate a string, right? You can just use it. It's not a must. You must always open an object here. You can just say you can say email validation. Email validation should be equals to joy.string dot email dot required. Then if you want to validate it, you would say you still do basically what is similar. You'd say error, let me just leave it as error. Error should be equals to email validation dot validate. Then you validate the email, which is just this email here, right? Okay, and since this is wrapped in try and catch, I could just remove this error part and then I could say validate async. Await validate async, right? So it's going to, while running this, is going to wait and see if this validation passes. If the validation passes, it continues to the next line of code, right? But if the validation doesn't pass, it's going to pass that error to the catch statement. And well, you can decide to send a message back, or you can just decide to show internal server error here. So let me try it. Let me send an invalid email, right? Let me try to validate. What did I just click? Okay, sorry. Let's see where I can actually validate my email. I'm checking forgot password, right? Forgot password right here, and I changed that to something that's not a valid email. You see? Okay. It said value must be a valid email, right? Value must be a valid email. Okay, so let's come back here and see. Why is it saying value must be a valid email? Okay, the value is the email here which you put in. Okay, so this is something you can also do, right? You can also set custom messages, right, for your validation. So if your validation failed, you can give it a part, like a certain kind of message it should send, right? So if you want to do that, you would say dot messages, because there are a lot. I have string, email, and required. Messages will take an object, and the object, of course, it's key value pair. So, but the key is going to have a certain form. So if you want to check if it's a value string, you say any. Okay, if it's not a valid email, you say string dot email, and then you can say your email is not valid. Then if you want to check if it's required, right, you could do something like this: any dot required. I think it's required. Then you can write in here that email field is required. Okay, so this is what I've written here is I'm customizing the message I send back, right? So instead of just sending something like value must be an email, you can actually give it what you want, like give it a custom message, right? So let's try and send that request again. You see, it's saying your email is not valid. That's what I said. So what I said here, right, is if the validation for the email part is, like, if the error originates from when it's trying to validate the email, right, then you should tell us that it is not valid actually, right? If the email did not even exist at all, so I just say any dot required, so which means it will say the email field is required. So that means if I come here and I remove this field and I send it, you see, email field is required. This one is default, right? This one is the default. Okay, it's what I actually specified. I said the email field is required. If you check here, you see that I said that the email, sorry, I said here that email field is required, right? Okay, and there are also a lot of other things you can actually do with the Joy package, right? But then if I send this email this way, it will actually be validated, right? So if I send it, you see it's going, and yeah, it says email sent successfully, right? That's because the email I put in here is valid, but if it was an invalid email, it would not just tell me internal server error. Now it would give me a description, right? A nice description of what my email is, right? Or what the problem is. Okay. All right. So with what I've said so far, with what I've taught so far, right? Does anybody have a question or any question? Okay, so Abiola is asking, why is the string.email in quotes as well? Is it? It's a property, so I was expecting it not to have quotes around. Yes. Okay. Now, let me explain that to you. The reason is a string, or so let's say the value for your, or the key to your a property, right, in an object cannot contain full stop. Like it cannot contain this period, right? It cannot contain period. It cannot contain space, right? It can't contain special characters. So if I remove the quotes, you see, it's going to underline the dot there because it wasn't expecting a dot there. Okay, so this is not acceptable as the name. It's just the same way your string or your variable names can contain full stop, it can contain comma, it can contain space, right? But now, if you want your object to contain space or full stop or contain all those special characters in as the key in an object, right? Then you must put it in quotes. If you don't put it in quotes, it's going to throw an error. Okay. So now, if this was an ordinary object, right? Maybe this email validation was just equals to this object, for example. I could simply say email validation, then in brackets, open bracket, close, I could then say string.email, right? Let me show you what I mean. Let's see. Let me just say try. Let me just name this try.js. Let's say const obj object should be equals to, then I want this to be user.name. User.name can be Abiola. Then we could say user.password. User.password can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So if I want to print out your username, right? Your username, I could then say console.log. Now, most people want to do obj.user.name. You see, if you try writing obj.user.name, it won't work, right? So instead of using your dot notation here, since you're using string here, since this your object name is a string, then you have to use the bracket notation here. So you have to say objects at user.name. If you even mistakenly write it to correct you, see user.name. Right, if we come here and we say node try, and where did I create that? Okay, I'm not in the right file, not in the right place. So where is this? Let me see. It's in, okay. Let me just route quickly there. Okay, so I have try.js here. So I'll say node try, right? And it's showing Abiola. And definitely, if I want to show the password, I'll say user.password. And it's going to show Abiola and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is the reason, right? And this is why the reason why we use it this way, right? We wrote string.email is that somehow in Joy actually uses this format, right? This is a strict format with Joy. You have to specify the paths to what you want to validate. So if I'm saying, so what I'm saying here is when the email is being validated, right? And then the validation goes wrong. This is what I want. This is the custom error I want to send back, right? While this any is just like any. So whether it's string or sorry, whether okay, any dot required means whether it's string dot required or email dot required or whatever that ends at required, right? that as far as that field doesn't exist, right? We should just tell them that that field that they are trying to validate, right, is required, so they have to send it. Okay. So who doesn't understand? Is there anybody that is not following, right, what I'm explaining? Who doesn't understand? Hello?
Yeah, okay.
You guys are okay? All right. So this is the first part of the validation, right? We are going to see in our next class, right, how we can do even more complex validations, right? So I guess I'd have to would call it a day here, since there is no further questions, right? So your biggest take home should be how you can actually validate your objects, right? So here we just validated only a string, right? Now these messages I put here, you can also put it in your object. So right, like for example, here that I said that this email is required, I could still write something like dot messages. See it here, dot messages. Then I could then say string dot email, right? String dot email. Your email is not valid, right? If you want to like customize the way your response should be, right? You can do it here. You can still use that same any dot required here. So this is going to override the default, right? So maybe email field is required. You see? This is also welcome. You can do it here. If I write dot message, you see is messages. I think message is just for one message, but I mainly use messages more because I usually join a lot of things, right? I join a lot, so I always use messages. All right. So that's how you can actually perform validation, right? Using Joy, right? All right. So in the absence of any question for today's class, I think we'll call it a day. So thanks a lot for joining today's class, and I'll see you on Thursday. If you have any question, you can ask here. You can also ask on the group, on the channel, and I'll answer it if I'm online, if I'm not
Please,
online.
so my own is, I want you to help me correct something.
Okay, is it on this particular topic, today's topic?
No, not on this particular topic. No, the picture.
Okay, your uploads, right, is not working well.
And my own is not forthcoming.
Okay, all right, no problem. We'll fix that. I'll fix that, but that would be after this class. I'll drop a link and then you can share your screen.
Yes, that's what I want to do. What is it you want to create meet, or when you stop recording?
I'll create a meet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. So in the absence of any question, bye bye guys. See you in the next class.